Hello and welcome back to NoBS. Today we're talking about a popular grocery store called Trader Joe's. Trader Joe's is pretty famous out in California, and it also has some franchises across our country as well. And basically, they're being attacked for supposedly having some racist brands and products there, and it's absolutely insane. It's totally silly, and we'll get to that soon. But before we do, let's just talk about the grocery for a moment. People might not have heard of it. I know it's still new in a lot of areas. It's just coming to other states. So basically, let me explain. Trader Joe's is kind of a smaller boutique grocery store, maybe. It's just like a specific one. They have their own little brands and products, and some of them are good deals. Some of them are like healthier options. All in all, it's just a decent grocery store. They have some fair prices. They're known for like their foods and their bread, and they have wine too. They have $1 wine and stuff like that. Like they have a lot of good deals, and it's pretty famous. I learned about it when I lived in Los Angeles for many years. I went a few times, but I was never super impressed. I thought it was pretty cool, but it wasn't worth the time to like go out and about and go find a Trader Joe's. I would just rather go to whatever grocery was in my area. But basically, they're known for that. And what's come up recently was a certain high school student started like a petition to go after Trader Joe's. It was pretty absurd. And they're basically just attacking them for having some brands that feature different ethnicities. Like they have a wide variety of food there. They're kind of known for being like international. So they'll have different brands. Like they have one called Trader Jose's, and that's their Mexican food. You know, Jose, Joe, Jose. It's a little bit of a joke. And then they have Trader Min, I believe, is what they call their Chinese food, and so on and so forth. They have different brand names and stuff like that. And I guess that's offensive now. Like a store can't sell other brands. I don't really see it. Like, I don't get it. Like there are people named Jose in the Hispanic culture. There are people named Min in the Chinese culture, and all this stuff. It's not offensive. It's just names, and you know, maybe a little bit of a goof. Like it's kind of a funny name. They make a play on Trader Joe's, but no one's really offended by this is the point. Like, especially not these nationalities, not these people. It's just some high school student being nosy, trying to stir up drama. And now it's turned into a national issue. Now we're talking about all kinds of people bringing it up, including the Los Angeles Times. Like the LA Times has brought this story up, and they're trying to make it a big deal. And they're actually getting a little backlash on Twitter for this. I've seen some pretty bad comments as they try to make the case for this story that's just not there. It's not a story. It's not really offensive. It's just like a non-issue. But regardless, the LA Times is just as woke as the New York Times. So they're going to try to come after them as hard as they can. So let's go ahead and read the tweet and see what they have to say. It says, Trader Joe's has built a following that other brands might only dream of. It has a podcast and an old-timey newsletter. Fans rave about its groceries. But it's becoming increasingly clear that Trader Joe's can't please everyone anymore. I don't think they ever pleased everyone. I don't think anything or anyone can please everyone. I mean, that's kind of what people learn when you grow up. Like, you can't please everyone. That's like the phrase that you just know. It's just true. I mean, there's always going to be someone that complains. There's always going to be someone in this day and age who says something's racist. So I just don't get why people even bother. Like, I don't get why it's even like a story. Like the LA Times are picking this up, and they're just trying to make this non-story a real story when it's really not. Last month, a petition called for Trader Joe's to change the packaging on some food items. Instead of being branded under the usual Trader Joe's name, some Mexican-style products are labeled Trader Jose's, and some Chinese-style foods are Trader Ming's. So I thought it was Min, but it's Trader Ming. And yeah, these are the two nationalities that are getting referenced. And again, it's not offensive. People eat Mexican and Chinese food all the time. That's actually an honor. That means you enjoy it. And Trader Joe's making these names, these special names, is actually complimentary. This is like a good thing. And we should be international here. We're talking about trying to be this melting pot, this salad bowl we call America. So to kind of go against that, it's basically telling people like to stay in their own lane. Like, oh, white people can't sell Hispanic food. Chinese people have to sell their own food. That's pretty racist. That reminds me of that racist versus woke video, because they mentioned a joke like that where they're like, oh, a white person owns that Mexican food store. We should shut them down. It's like, no, you can have other kinds of foods. It's not offensive. No one cares. This is just the only people that care are pretending to care. They don't actually think they're offended. No one is getting hurt by this. It's just absurd left-wing politics, SJWs taking over, and the woke culture just running amok. The other side story I'll say here that this reminds me of is this reminds me of a job my wife previously had. She worked at a restaurant a few years back, and I remember it now specifically because she worked at this pho restaurant, like Vietnamese food. They have pho, like pho kind of bowls, like soup with meat in it, really good stuff, noodles and stuff like that. But the funny thing was, it was actually a Vietnamese restaurant, and everyone that worked there was Thai. My wife is from Thailand. All of her friends that worked there were Thai as well, most of them. So it was kind of interesting because people would come in and think they were Vietnamese or like traditional, and they would realize that they're actually Thai, but no one was ever offended by it. Like, I remember all the time she worked there, it was at least a couple years, and she wasn't offended by it. Vietnamese people came in, they weren't offended. Other races, like, it was a very international area. This was actually in Los Angeles too. And, it was near some Trader Joe's and other places out there. Like, no one cared, and it wasn't like a thing. And I know it's like, oh, it's because it's Asians and they're Asians, but they're totally separate countries. And I never thought it was an issue. I'm not bringing it up because it's an issue. I'm just saying this stuff happens all the time. It's super common. Like, you'll see Korean people running a Chinese restaurant, or, there might be a Mexican chef and owner of an American restaurant. Like, a lot of American food is cooked by Hispanic employees. Like, Hispanics run like McDonald's in my neighborhood. There's different restaurants like that are American food, cheeseburgers, fries, and it's not a big deal. It's not offensive. It's just, we're in an international country. People like lots of different kinds of foods, and people want to start different kinds of stores, and I don't see the problem. After news of the petition broke, Trader Joe's released a statement saying it had actually decided several years ago to start phasing out the product labels. But days later, TJ's issued a second statement saying this time, we disagree that any of these labels are racist. So they actually came to their senses. I heard about this double reaction, and I think the first reaction was just emotional. They weren't thinking, and they just said they're going to get rid of it. They were scared. They didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings, so they caved in. But then after time, what I heard was a lot of their customers were the ones that actually complained, and they're like, no, we like this. We want this product. We want this name. We want this label. Like, this is why we go to your store. So it's good that the Trader Joe's actually ended up listening to their clients and their customers. That's a good turn, but they really shouldn't have overreacted in the first place. This is a bad sign. This is what happens with all kinds of companies and products and stuff right now. They get called out by the woke mobs, and then they just cave in right away without thinking twice. And I think it's good that they're course correcting, but really the problem is they should be standing their ground in the first place. If shoppers embrace a brand because it resonates with them emotionally, a difference of opinion can feel like a betrayal. A former TJ shopper used to decide where she'd live based in part on how close she was to a TJ's location. But the changed stances did not sit well with her. This is really a time where companies need to reflect on what their goal is in this movement and how they can push forward racial justice in their day-to-day operations, said Lupita Huerta, a former Trader Joe's shopper. So they're losing shoppers, and the shoppers sound like they're making good points. I mean, it's a little extreme to pick where you live based on a TJ location. I mean, like I said, this is nothing to write home about. But yeah, some people are obsessed with it. That's their thing. If that's where they want to get their groceries, by all means, that's their freedom and their right. But if Trader Joe's changes things on them, I do understand them wanting to change their location. And it just goes to show that they're hurting their actual base, and they're actually hurting their business by caving into this woke stuff. Like, they think it's going to help them. But the problem is, this happens a lot of times when woke people call stuff out. Like, they're not actually customers. They're not actually the people that are going to pay them and give the company money. They're just complainers. They're usually just leftists who sit at home all day and don't work. They just complain on Twitter. But especially in this case, we're talking about some high schooler complaining. I mean, this high schooler is not going to be spending money on groceries. They're living with their parents. They're complaining about something that's not even having to do with them. And that's just the par for course for stories like this. However, the controversy isn't expected to cause Trader Joe's lasting damage. We invited readers to share their feelings, and responses poured in. More than 80 of the 100 plus who responded said the labels would not change their feelings about Trader Joe's. So I think that's showing that people don't actually care. And here Mindy says, "Oh, shut up. Not everyone spends their day trying to be offended and demanding people bend their knee to their ridiculous will at all times. It must be tiring to be perpetually offended all the time." Very, very true. That's their go-to line. "I'm offended. Apologize now, please." And I think this brings up a great point. Like we talked about being offended before and how much value is put on that. It's like highly overvalued. Like being offended is not a big deal. I mean, there are certain cases, there are certainly bad things out there and stuff that needs to be corrected. But just saying you're offended is not an argument. It's not a case. It's not helping. It's not, it's really more about you. Like if you're offended by things at Trader Joe's, especially if you're offended by these benign things like store labels, products at a Walmart or items on the menu at Burger King, like if that offends you, that's on you. That means you need help. You need to get a stronger composition. You need to be more mentally acute, like more smart, more thinking, more like passion about other things. Like you're caring about the wrong things. So if you're triggered by Trader Joe's labels, that's your problem, not everyone else's. And instead of telling them to change and like change the whole world, like you should change. You should get better. You should get stronger. You should learn to be less offended, like be stronger willed, like keep your matters to yourself. If there was actually an issue, maybe other people could help you address it. But this is not the one. This is just terrible, busy work. This is just liberals going after anything based on race. They think any kind of racist claim is going to get them clout and get them attention. And it's working. It's working at some point. And even you could argue we're giving them attention too, but the point is, we're calling them out because they're doing bad things, and we're trying to laugh at them and say, hey, this is silly. You're trying to change the names of stuff at Trader Joe's when it's not offensive at all. That about wraps things up. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Make sure you comment your thoughts on everything below. Also, hit that like button if you enjoyed what you saw, and until next time, have a great day.